I want to share an example of how I take lessons from my past and apply them to my current situation. Now, this may or may not be applicable or useful or even interesting to you, but I figured I would share it anyway and just throw it out there. So this particular story begins when I was around 13 or 14 years old. I don't remember exactly, but it was after school at soccer practice, and on this particular day we had a scrimmage. And that was not anything out of the ordinary, but it's because of what happened during this scrimmage that it really sticks out in my memory. And as I'll explain further along, this particular memory stuck out for a reason. But anyway, in this particular scrimmage, at one point I got the ball and dribbled a few people and scored a goal. And as is the case in sports, just in general, and in particular in the game of soccer or football, depending on what country you live in, obviously the international name as opposed to the American one makes the most sense. It's football, right? Anyway, but I suppose socks and soccer is a close approximation, but in any event, I was thinking I was hot shit at this moment in time, celebrating. And I'll never forget, my coach pulled me aside after the scrimmage was over, and he said, "So what did you think about that goal? You remember that one play where you scored that goal? What did you think about that?" And I said, "Well, it was a good play, right?" And he said, "Well, did you notice anything in particular about the way you scored that goal?" And I didn't notice anything at all in particular about it. And he said, "Well, if you go back in your memory and really think about it, you didn't take a single touch with your left foot. You used your right foot for the entire play. And if you notice in general, when you play, that's what you tend to do." And I sat there and I thought about it for a second. I said, "Oh yeah, he's right." And I thought about it as the days went on since after that. But anyway, so he said to me, if you want to play in college and maybe even professionally, you have to learn to use your other foot. You will never get by just relying on one foot at those higher levels. And I really took this to heart because, my left foot was really weak and I just never used it. I was dominant on my right side. So at my parents' house where I grew up, we had this really small brick wall on one side of the house. And every day after school, after practice, I started just kicking the ball against this brick wall with my left foot and just working on my left foot. Over and over and over again, I did this for years. And of course, I didn't do it every single day, but I did it a lot. Just working on my left foot. And while I was working on that, and even I would practice juggling, and focus on my left foot as opposed to my right one, and just really try to improve my abilities with that foot as opposed to my right foot. And so, time goes on, and it gets better, but I don't really notice it, and I use it in games, and it just kind of becomes like a second nature thing where you don't really notice that you've started to really improve your abilities as far as the thing you were working on goes, to the point where you're using it as if it's always been that way. And so fast forward to about 10 years ago. And I was just, at this point, done playing competitively, seriously. And I was just playing in a men's league with a few friends. And I'll never forget, we were warming up. I was warming up with a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a really long time, but we played together when we were younger. And he was just in town, and we said, "Hey, come play with us." He said, "All right, sure." So we're warming up, and just kicking the ball around, and I'll never forget, he says to me, He says, Steve, what foot are you dominant? Are you right-footed or left-footed? And I sat there and I said, oh, well, I'm right-footed. He said, oh, man, I could have sworn you were left-footed because just watching you kick the ball with each foot, you just looked more technically sound with the left foot than the right foot. And, you know, looking back on it, after that, you know, comment was made to me, it was really true. You see, because I had spent so much time practicing on making my left foot better, I had a certain technical accuracy with the striking of the ball with my left foot that I didn't have with my right foot because, you know, that was the dominant side and I could do anything with that side just because that's the way that I grew up learning to play. In the same way that if you're listening to this and you're right-handed and you write with that right hand, and then you put the pencil or the pen in your left hand and you try to write a sentence, it just doesn't work. You know, you're trying to scribble out something and it looks like you're 2 years old with a pen in your hand trying to write a word, you know. You can't do it in the same fluid way that you can do it with the hand that you learn to write with, regardless if it's right or left. Now, to my point, if you sat down every day with a pen in your left hand and you sat there and you said, okay, this is how I write with my right hand, and you looked at the mechanics of it, you studied the engineering of it, how your body, and the placement of every, you know, part of your body when you actually write out the words, and then you tried to mimic that structure with your left hand, then you sat there every day and you tried to mirror that, and you just focused on it, you did it every day for years and years and years. Eventually, you would be able to write with your left hand the same way that you can write with your right hand. But even then, it still wouldn't feel as natural as the way that you learned it. So that's essentially the example that I'm giving with how I was as a player with my right foot versus my left foot. It got to the point where my left foot was almost identical in comfortability as far as using it to strike the ball goes, as it was with my right foot, but it was still always there in my mind that I was more comfortable and I could still kick it further with my dominant right foot than I could with my left foot. Anyway, the point being that because I had been so immersed in making my left foot better, I didn't even realize that it had become as good as it had, to the point where somebody would look at me and say, are you left-footed or right-footed? And the reason that it's such a random memory, and you're probably listening to this, well, what does this have to do with anything? So just recently I went to another wedding. I'm at the time and age, apparently, where all of my friends and all of my extended family are getting married. It's crazy. I go to so many weddings now. It's just, I know, you know, weddings are fun and everything, but the whole process is, you know, it's kind of, this is something that I want to get into too, but just to kind of hint at it, you know, what do? Show up and say, hey, do you realize that this whole marriage thing is a sham in the sense that you're actually signing a contract with the state that gives the state legal rights to intervene in your private affairs? You realize you're signing that sovereignty away to the state by engaging in this mutual contract between yourselves. And, you know, what do? Show up to the wedding and say that, you know, especially when the woman has been programmed her entire life to have this dream wedding with this, you know, worthless rock on her finger called a diamond that has been marketed as something of value, and the poor sap guy spent, you know, thousands of dollars on this ring. And, you know, what do? Do you show up to a wedding and start talking about all that stuff? No, of course not. So it does, on a subconscious level, sort of eat away at your soul every time that you show up to one of these and just have to not say anything about the whole situation. But at the same time, you know, you have that truth about the situation going in the back of your mind the whole time, but then everybody's having a great time and they really do, you know, have an affection for each other, and all the family is very jovial and just, you know, beaming with a certain affection towards everyone around them because they're just happy to see their friend or family member themselves happy and finding someone to share their life with. And there's nothing, evil about that. It's like anything else. It's just the structure of everything that removes the spontaneous aspect of it all, Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I ran into someone at this particular wedding that I just went to who I hadn't seen in a really long time. And we were talking, and it was so crazy. He looked at me and he said, I don't even know who you are anymore. You are so different than the person that I grew up with. I don't even know what to say to you right now. And I was doing the thing that you do in these situations, which is, okay, I remember what it was like when I was 20 years old and didn't know anything. And I know how to interact with people in social environments. So I'll just put that mask on and just ignore everything else. I won't hide the spirit and my connection with it. I won't hide that, but I'll just, put a mask over it and use the words and phrases and subjects that everyone else talks about. And that'll just be under the surface, right? But this person, for whatever reason, saw through all that, and he just said, your whole vibe is just completely different. I don't even know what to make of you right now. And that conversation and him saying that to me is what made me have that memory be triggered about what my coach said to me when I was 13 years old, and then what that other person said to me all those years later. And I was able to draw a parallel metaphor for what's going on right now from that with me. You see, what I mean is, I've been so immersed in my own bubble, as it were. I've been so immersed in my own struggle and desire to reconnect with my natural design to become what I was designed to be. I've been so immersed in that and, pretty much isolated in that immersion, not having a lot of contact with the outside world or other people on a daily basis. I've been so immersed in that I did not realize just how far that I have come from what I used to be. And when you don't have that realization, it's so very easy to get down on yourself when you fail or you struggle or you have a setback in your goal to reconnect to your natural design. Those setbacks seem so crushing. You feel like such a failure. But without the realization of, oh my goodness, look at how far I've come. Look at how different I am from what I used to be. I should be really proud of myself for how much I've grown as an individual, for how many ways that I have detached myself from these things that are destroying my soul, destroying my spirit, destroying my connection with life. I've made a lot of progress. You see, I have learned through hard work, discipline, and vigilance how to use my left leg the same way that I use my right leg. In this case, I've learned to somewhat use the spirit in the same way that I have always known how to use my physical body to navigate this realm that we are incarnated in. That is the metaphor that I was able to draw. And yeah, it's still not nearly as comfortable as the right foot is, using it as it were, in the actual game. And there's a lot of times where I go to use that left foot and I try to do something in the game and I play a terrible ball, as the metaphor goes, or I miss the goal badly, or whatever the case may be. That left foot just isn't quite up to par with the right. And so that is a way that that you can draw, or a particular example of the way that you can draw from your past and apply it to your present situation to extract a metaphor that will help you understand your current situation. And that is, I think, the situation that a lot of us find ourselves in. And so I suppose the only reason that this whole sequence of events that took 20 years to unfold is to remind myself in this very moment to take a deep breath, to slow down, to see that you've come so far. So many of us have come so far from where we used to be. Even for myself, I mean, it's crazy to think about, but it's only been 6 years, almost 7 years later this spring, since I even knew even a little fraction of any of this. I was just a regular person doing what regular people did 7 years ago. I didn't know any of this. I mean, when you look at it like that, it's pretty incredible to be at the level that I'm at now. And I have been engaged in self-sabotage along the way in those 7 years, almost purposefully preventing myself from fully becoming what I was designed to be. I'm not quite sure where that self-sabotage comes from. Well, I have my ideas, and I'm going to get into that later with a different context than this one. So don't beat yourself up. You've come a long way. I know that if you look back at where you were compared to where you are now, if you're listening to this, I know that you're going to look back and say, wow, I've come a long way. I know so much more than I used to know. I'm so different than I used to be. I'm essentially a different person. That's how I kind of view my past now. It's as if there was a second birthing process where, okay, that was that lifetime, and now I'm in a different life. And in that new life, it's okay. Take it one step at a time. Don't be so hard on yourself. You've really done a good job in a lot of ways. Sure, you've got a ways to go. That left foot isn't quite there yet. But when you come into contact with somebody who doesn't know you personally, they're just going to look at the situation objectively, like they don't know you personally from the past. And so they have no reference point or context for how you used to be. When that person comes into contact with you, they're just going to look at you and say, and see you objectively, and they're going to think, well, are you left-footed or right-footed? In other words, are you, do you see the metaphor there? So, in other words, they will be able to sense the resonance that you are now oscillating at, whether or not they know it subconsciously. It could just be like the situation that I encountered where a person can just sense that something's different. And if I explained the situation to them, they would just laugh or roll their eyes at me, and just because of their own programming, and they would have no concept of what I was talking about. Or I guess I wouldn't even bother to try at this point. That's just a lesson that I've learned the hard way over the years. There's just no reason to do that. So, don't be too hard on yourself. That's the message that was coming through to me over those series of events that took so long to be clarified to me, which is an incredible thing. And when you look at your past and things that have happened and apply it to your situation now, you will begin to be able to extract metaphors that will really, really help you deal with the struggle that we are all going through. And it is a struggle. It really is. The odds are so stacked against us. It's incredible that we've been able to get as far as we've been able to get, considering everything that is thrown at us. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Oh, and there's one more sequence of events that I wanted to discuss that happened to me when I went to this wedding. I was staying with some family just to, split the cost of staying down there for a couple days. And I got down there first, a night before everyone else. And so that next morning, I got up and I was looking around for a gym to go get a quick lift in. And I found one that was right up the street. And so I got ready, not even thinking anything of it. I got ready and I walked down there. It was another beautiful morning in the fall. And I got there and the door was locked and I'm thinking, what's going on here? And it just so happened that there was a hurricane that had come through the night. Well, the media called it a hurricane, but it was really more of a tropical storm. And so all of these stores and establishments had closed that next day. So no one had to apparently, drive into this thing the night before, or that morning, or whatever. So the gym was closed, and I'm like, oh man, that's no good. I really wanted to get that in before everybody got down here. So I walked back to the place that I'm staying, and there was this homeless individual sitting on the side of the road, just had a sign up that said hungry. And so I stopped and talked to him for a second and, just kind of tried to gauge his vibe, because of course you have to, it's so, this is one thing that breaks my heart about this system and everything that it does to all of us is, a lot of times you'll see people on the side of the road holding up signs saying, hey, please help. I need help. And the cynical side of all of us, due to the fraud and just general lawlessness that goes on in this civilization, is to think, well, they're probably scamming. It's desperate times. These people are probably just scamming. They probably have enough money to survive. They just want to scam regular people out of money. And so that's the first thought that goes through your head. I'm not going to pretend like it isn't. And that is so heartbreaking to me, because if it could be guaranteed that someone was not hustling you, and how relevant and just perfectly resonant with the internet culture is that example, right? If only you could determine who was truly being genuine on the internet, because it's even more difficult to do on the internet than it is in person. At least in person, you can truly gauge their vibe and see what sort of wavelength they're on. On the internet, man, that's what's probably made me so jaded to the real world, is there are so many scammers. I mean, it's probably 95% scammers on the internet, so your first reaction is, all right, is this person just trying to scam me out of money? Or what's the deal here? A lot of people are really good salesmen, and they can convince you that they're in desperate times and they need your help or they're going under and you got to support them now. And you know how it goes. Anyway, so I chatted this guy up for a minute or two, and I said, all right, man, well, and this is another part of the story that's just interesting. I said, all right, man, well, I'm not going to just straight up give you money, because we both know you're just going to go buy some alcohol with it. And he just kind of smiled. And I said, but I'll buy you some food. And I said, well, there's a McDonald's over there. What would you like? And so he told me what he wanted. And I'm walking over to the McDonald's, sitting there thinking, well, okay, actually giving money to this soul-sucking corporation is one of the worst things that I can possibly imagine here. This corporation that supports everything that's wrong with agriculture, supports factory farming. I mean, it's an abomination of a thing that exists in this world. And yet, actually giving my money to this thing is trumped by the fact that there's a hungry guy on the street who hasn't eaten in 2 days, and it's like, okay, well, what do I do in this situation? Well, of course, I'm going to forget about all that, and I'm going to buy the guy a couple sandwiches and a coffee so, he can have a meal. So, this is the dilemma, one of many, that this, again, civilization wedges into all of us. These contradictory thoughts that we're all forced to deal with. But in any event, I gave him his food, just tipped my cap to him, and I was like, all right, man, good luck. And I walked back feeling ashamed that I'm about to walk back to a nice, apartment rental thing that we got on Airbnb. And I'm not going to be struggling for food that day. You know, it's heartbreaking. And there's so much just terrible stuff going on that it breaks your heart. And I'm not going to go into listing all of it because, well, that would just, we'd be here for we'd be here for 5 hours. So I get back and I look up every gym that's in, I don't know, a 15, 20 mile radius, because I wasn't going to get crazy and drive further than that. 15 to 20 mile radius of the place I was staying. And I just started calling them, and everyone was not answering or had a message. We're closed, we're closed, we're closed. Well, finally, there's one that picks up. And I say, oh, hey, man, are you guys open? And he said, yeah, we're open. And I was like, all right, cool. So I get the address and I figure out the directions. And this is where it gets crazy. I follow the directions. I drive to this gym, and as I'm almost there, I take a right on this street, and all of a sudden I pull up to a giant army checkpoint, and it's a huge military base. And I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was a huge infantry army base. And I say, okay, well, I must have written the directions down wrong. This can't be right. And so I turned around and I drove around the area looking for it. And I said, well, maybe that is right. I don't know. Maybe I have to, maybe this gym is on the other side of this base and I just have to go through it for some reason. You know, maybe that's the only way. So I pull up to the window, and there's a straight up, a straight up army dude with a gun, and he's at the checkpoint. And I told him the situation. I said, hey man, I'm looking for this gym, and I gave him the name of it. He goes, oh yeah, that's actually an army gym on our base. And I said, oh man, I called and I didn't even think to ask that. I mean, it didn't say anything like that on the website that I looked it up on. It didn't have any sort of army designation that I could see, and I just had no idea. And I said, well, where can I turn around? And he goes, well, hey, hold on a second. And, because we were talking for a few minutes at this point, he said, here, I'll get you a pass. And I was like, oh, really? I mean, I don't want to cause any trouble. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So now, obviously, if you're listening to this and you're into the subject matter that we are into, the super paranoid part of people that get into this information would be appalled that I actually was considering this, right? Oh, what, you're going to go onto a military base with your YouTube channel that's out there? And you guys just have to understand that that is not the reality of the situation. Do you think they care about my stupid YouTube channel? I mean, come on. Like, no, this stuff is so compartmentalized that I'm not even worried about that sort of situation. Moreover, even if there is a slight thought, I'm not going to act like those thoughts weren't in the back of my mind. Oh, well, this would be the perfect place to do something to you. Something stupid like that. Well, I'm sitting there with this state of energy that I am resonating with, and that is being projected outward in my immediate electromagnetic field, that doesn't even seem like a possibility. And not only that, but it affects everyone that I'm around. So this guy, he comes back and he says, hey man, just pull up over there and we got to just, run you through the security thing, and then we'll get you your pass. And so I walked around, they took my picture, they made me put my fingerprint down, they got my social security number, and I'm just sitting there chatting the guys up, having a, small talk, and they give me my pass, and they say, here man, it's right up to the left. And I went up to the gym, and I'm in the gym with it was crazy. I was in the gym with all of these Army cadets. Like, some of them were, I think that's what you call them, but some of them were actually in their fatigues working out. And oh man, I've just and once again, I guess there's sort of a theme emerging throughout this recording, which is What am I going to do? Stop one of the cadets and give them a history on the military-industrial complex and what they're really doing and how big of a scam it is? What is that what I'm going to do? You know, be some pointless evangelist for that? No, I'm just going to let these people do their thing and be on their own path. There's no point in me doing anything like that. Which goes to, so anyway, I had my workout. And it was a crazy, amazing experience. But it was... Oh, what was I? I was just going to say something. I'm going to lose it as I go on in the story. Well, maybe it'll come back. Do you see how the sequence of events played out where I did something in the morning for someone, and then it was returned to me later that day when that army dude could have easily said, "No, man, get out of here. You don't know anybody on this base? No, you can't have a pass. Get out of here. Turn around." But no, he did something really nice for me and was like, "Yeah, we don't usually do this, but I'll get you a pass, man. You seem harmless enough." You know, so it was, that's just how it works, right? That's how this whole thing is designed to work. Give and receive, simultaneously, giving and receiving. It may not happen immediately. I mean, of course, there was a sense of well-being when I gave, that I helped somebody out, but that was equally returned to the guy who helped me out in the sense of well-being he got when he gave to me. And it was an equal exchange in that way both times. We both gave and received at the same time. That is how we're designed to function. But then, of course, what if we threw the whole money system is designed to create a barrier to those sort of exchanges. And I suppose just as a piece of paper, if it didn't have the interest and usury attached to it, maybe just as a unit of exchange, this piece of paper, which we all agreed had value, that would enable us to store energy. Maybe it could have some use if we interacted with each other in that give-receive way, where it wasn't something that we hoarded to save for years and years and years, if that makes sense. Well, I suppose that's what the whole system was based on in the first place, as far as using the precious metals to peg the paper money to, but of course they control the supply of the precious metals too. So in any event, we're talking degrees of freedom here, you know. The ultimate freedom, of course, is no money, a consciousness and awareness that transcends any use for money. But we're so far away from that, or at least, you know, we're putting limitations on how far away we are from that based on the world around us as portrayed through the media, which is not even close to the reality of the situation. You know. And along those lines, I also wanted to mention how, you know, these stories that I'm telling right now and these things that have happened to me in recent months, you'll hear a lot of people on YouTube that are fake truthers. You know, they'll talk about how no one understands it. I mean, I shouldn't say all fake. I shouldn't say all fake YouTube accounts and characters. There, of course, are real people that are making comments saying, you know, "Hey, man, you know, no one in my immediate life gets me. No one in my immediate life talks about any of this stuff. You know, they're all zombies, blah, blah, blah." You know, all that sheep programming that we are purposely programmed to repeat because, again, it fosters division between all of us. But anyway, use some common sense here. If that is the case, if each and every one of us individually that are on this level can see that not even a fraction of the people in our real lives that we know are aware of any of this stuff, then surely a YouTube channel that is discussing these topics, that has over 100,000 subscribers, bought almost all of those subs, okay? And bought almost all of their comments from sock accounts, okay? Like, use your logical deductive abilities here. If in the real world you're not finding very many people who are even aware of these things, what are the odds that there would be 100,000 people in the entire world that would not only, you know, go looking for these things, but would make it through certain filters and arrive at a YouTube channel that is, you know, at a sub-layer of the onion from the Alex Jones layer that would have 100,000 subscribers, or even 50 or 40 or 30 or 20 or even 10. I mean, come on. I mean, there's probably, maybe there's collectively 10,000 people on the entire planet that are even close to the level that we're discussing here. You know, I mean, there are some people that I personally have been in contact with for many years at this point that see some of it, but that's just from slowly being exposed to me. You know, they're slowly changing over time because they've been exposed to me so much. And it's just, you know, when I have the ability to get to know someone on that level where they can trust me that I would not mislead them, and then I am using example after example after example after example over many years, and eventually they just have to say, if something breaks within their own psyche and they start breaking free, and then they start questioning themselves. And that is amazing, I gotta say. You know, I had, there was one guy I know who, he even pointed out something to me the other day, and I just went, whoa, man, you know who you sound like? You sound like me. He just started laughing. And, but yeah, man, you know, somebody that was going around with this toxic information, like, can you imagine somebody that has one of these YouTube gang stalking channels that was put in the situation that I was put in, where they had the option to go onto a military base to get a lift in? Do you think they would have done it? You know, no, they would have been so paranoid they would have never done something like that, and that's just no way to live. The paranoia is just anti-life. You see, the spirit that animates your awareness and existence is the antithesis of paranoia. It is awe-inspiring, centered, calm, filled with a capacity for expression and care that is infinite. It is not concerned with anything that is a potential threat. Because again, it's a part of you, the threat that is, and you're a part of it. So what's the point of viewing a threat in that way? In engaging with it in a state of fearful paranoia, which is not to say that there aren't scary things on a flight or fight level that can happen to you that will trigger your survival mechanism. I'm not talking about that sort of momentary fear. I'm talking about just a general view of the world, a paranoid outlook. And of course, it is no accident that this is the design of the truth movement and the alternative media. This is what the business model is. You know, it is designed to promote constant fear. You just need to look at the situation and see how far you've come. See how far you've come. You've been in your body this whole time, so you're blind to it. It's all one continuous stream to you, but it's only when an outsider comes in and says, hey, whoa, I don't even know who you are anymore, that you say, whoa, yeah, I guess I really have changed a lot, and I should be proud of myself for that. So be proud of yourselves. If you're listening to this and you have been on the same path that I've been on, be proud of yourself and embrace every challenge and every moment with an exuberance that a child would have. You know, I know it's easier said than done, but now maybe this resonates with me again because of the whole sports thing, but this is one thing that Adam Pants said that I really resonated with. In one of his recordings, he was talking about how all of the people that were exposed to him directly in person, and then even the people on the internet at the time who he was talking with on the phone, or who he was exchanging emails with, or even just the general people who were only listening to the recordings and maybe commenting on his YouTube page, were saying, hey, you know, I'm really opening up my psyche, and now I'm being exposed to all these entities, and all this crazy stuff is happening to me. What do I do? I'm freaking out over here. You know, this is scary. And you know, his response was, it was a brutal truth, but his response was just, hey, suck it up, you know? And as somebody who, I can only deduce that he also probably played some sort of sports at some point. But, you know, you say, hey, suck it up. You know, I think the exact example he gave was, you know, I'm not a paraplegic in a chair blowing through a straw to get down the block, right? No, you know, I'm an actual fully functioning human being, and yeah, you know, some of this might suck, but, you know, you need to just deal with it, right? Just deal with it. Don't be a baby. Then it's sort of a brutal truth, but yeah, I mean, that is sort of the mentality that I have for all this, you know, just let it all roll off your back. And I understand that maybe my path hasn't exposed me to some of the more scary things, but then again, it's kind of like, well, okay, for example, let's say this intelligence came to me and they said, okay, we're going to show you the true nature of this reality, and it's actually just a void. It's just a void. It's actually just all black, void. You don't really exist. Now, of course, whether or not that's actually true would be dubious, but you get my point, like how that could potentially be scary. If somebody told you that, oh, you know, it goes back to the whole Matrix thing, right? So you're sitting in the pod, this isn't real, blah, blah, blah. But even if there was some truth to that, oh, hey, this is the truth of the situation. Now be scared. Well, so what? Okay, I'm still having this experience. What do you want me to do? Sit there and dwell every moment on some possibility of what this might be? Suck it up, man. Deal with it. Deal with the situation. That's all I can say. Because what else are you going to do, you know? Just deal with it, man. And, yeah, I wish you all good luck in your journey to just deal with it. I know, again, it's easier said than done, but that's it for now. I'll talk to you guys sometime in the future. Peace.